Hey everyone, it's Q here, and in this video I'm going to cover some exploration that I did on the Shadowlands Beta just the other day. And this has been something that I had been curious about for a while, and that is the level of the mobs inside Legacy raids once Shadowlands is out. Now, I know we're still in a beta phase, but we're about 7 weeks out before Shadowlands releases, so this is subject to change, but the scaling does seem to make sense based on what I saw. I visited at least one raid from every expansion, so I'm going to go through Classic all the way to Battle for Azeroth and show you what level of the mobs I found inside these raids. Now, just a quick note, switching from normal or heroic or mythic or 10-man or 25-man difficulty didn't seem to alter the level of the mobs inside these various raids. So for Classic, let's get started with Onyxia's lair. I was in the area and I figured, let me just zone into Onyxia's lair, it's the closest instance nearby. If you check out her warders, her ads, you could see that they are indeed level 30, which I thought was very interesting. The character that I'm playing is level 60, so fighting level 30 mobs, elite or not, wasn't much of an issue for me. Now, when you select a boss, their default level with the raid frames that I'm using, they just show up as a skull. Based on the mobs within Onyxia's lair, I'm gonna guess that it is kind of tuned for level 30 players who are level 30, and I feel like this opens up the possibility of people challenging themselves. Like maybe we'll see some level 30 guilds pop up and you stay at that level to try to do this content, and you'll see with the TBC and Wrath why I think there's going to be a plethora of content for people if they do want to stay in the level 30 bracket, assuming that these levels don't change. As you can see, even at level 60, I didn't one-shot Onyxia. I still kind of went through the phases. It didn't pose much of a challenge either. I didn't really take any damage to my health or anything like that, so that is something to note. Alright, and since AQ is fresh on our minds, it was just recently released in Classic, I decided to also check out AQ 40 within the Shadowlands Beta just to see what's going on inside AQ as well. I wanted to see if the mobs were a little bit higher level, just because AQ 40 was released a little bit later in Vanilla WoW, so I wanted to see if there was any difference. But as you guys can clearly see, the mobs inside AQ 40 are also level 30, the same as the mobs that were inside Onyxia's lair. And same thing with Prophet Scarum. I was able to kill him pretty quickly without taking any damage. So after I killed Prophet Scarum, I did venture a little bit inside the temple to find that some of the mobs were level 31 elite as opposed to 30, so there was kind of like that slight level difference between level 30 and 31. Alright, moving on to TBC Dungeon. So what better place to check out the level of the mobs inside the raid than Black Temple? Basically just explored the first area just to get a quick look. So we killed a few mobs in the beginning, and we killed the first boss. I thought maybe the TBC Dungeons would be a couple of levels higher, but much to my surprise, the mobs inside Black Temple were also level 30 to 31 elite. So they seem to be tuned almost the same, I guess, as the classic dungeons that I had entered on Onyxia and AQ 40. That was a little bit of a surprise to me to see the Black Temple mobs within Burning Crusade, which is technically like a 10 level jump, or was back in the day, to see that the raid mobs were still the same level as the classic raid mobs. Moving on to Wrath of the Lich King, so of course I decided to go to Hellfire Citadel to see what level the mobs were inside, and much to my surprise again, the mobs were the same level as the ones inside the Burning Crusade raid and the classic raid. They were about level 30 to 31. So a little bit back I had mentioned that this could open up the possibility for a lot of content for guilds who don't necessarily want to go to max level or experience the max level content, or if they have completed all the max level content and they want to try some kind of different challenge. It seems like we could have guilds stop at level 30, and this opens up a possibility for so much content. This is 3 expansions worth of content. We've got all the classic raids, the TBC raids, and the Wrath of the Lich King raids. So I'm actually curious to hear what you guys think about that. Do you agree with that tuning, where we have level 30 to 31 raid mobs all the way up to Wrath of the Lich King? Let me know what you think about that in the comments below. Let's move on to Cataclysm. Now this is the first expansion where we start to see a jump up in the level of the mobs inside raids. I decided to go to Firelands, but before I did that I wanted to check behind the instance just to see if Gar was there, and I realized that some people don't know that Gar actually is an outdoor spawn, and he kind of patrols outside in the open world. And as you can see, I found Gar here, and he's good to kill if you want to collect some transmog items. He's not always up. I don't know the exact timer on Gar. There was a good chance he would be up on the beta, and sure enough he was, so I was able to kill him and collect a few items. Moving into Firelands, I took a quick trip to Firelands just to peep the level of the mobs, and they had jumped up 5 levels to level 35. So as you can see, we're killing some mobs in here, and they're all level 35, so I thought that was an interesting jump up from the previous 3 raid difficulties and expansions that we had looked at. They were all level 30, 31, so the mobs in Cataclysm do get that jump up by 5 levels. Moving on to Pandaria. The Cataclysm mobs had jumped up by 5. I was kind of guessing that the Mists of Pandaria mobs would be at least level 40 or so, but I was actually quite surprised when I zoned into the Siege of Orgrimmar. Now, first of all, I had to speak to Zidormi in the Vale of Eternal Blossoms just to revert the land back to its original state, so that I could zone into the Siege of Orgrimmar because there was some kind of invasion going on. But once I zoned in, I was able to see the first few mobs in there were level 36 and 37, a 1 to 2 level jump up from the mobs inside the Firelands. Based on the very beginning of Siege of Orgrimmar, where I zoned in, that was the initial level of the mobs that I was able to see, 36 to 37. Right, so let's move on to Warlords of Draenor. I decided to check out Hellfire Citadel, and when I zoned in, at this point I didn't know what level to expect the mobs to be, but the mobs in the very beginning at least did seem to be level 40, so we have jumped up from the 36-37 level from Mists of Pandaria all the way up to level 40 for Hellfire Citadel in Warlords of Draenor. Now, one thing I did want to mention is a few people were actually commenting on this, is that a lot of people in the past would farm Warlords of Draenor raids as a method of gold farming, just because the loot that you get from these bosses tend to vendor for a lot. But just as a quick comparison, the armor and items that I was getting did seem to vendor for significantly less than what they originally were back in Battle for Azeroth. As a prot paladin, I was able to solo the first part of the encounter, and I also killed the second boss too, the Iron Reaver, and then checked out a little bit of the trash inside. But so just to give you guys an idea of the level of the mobs inside Hellfire Citadel, level 40. Alright, and moving on to Legion now. So if we had level 40 mobs in Warlords of Draenor, for Legion, what level do you guys think that the mobs would be inside the raids? Well, I zoned into the Nighthold, which was actually one of my favorite raids from Legion, and the level of the trash mobs inside Nighthold were level 45. So we did get a 5-level jump from the Warlords of Draenor raid all the way up to the Legion raid of Nighthold that I checked out. And again, yeah, Nighthold is pretty cool, and I thought that was like one of my favorite raids, and like the whole Suramar City, and I even checked out like the ambiance of Suramar City, and I don't remember it ever raining like it's raining mana shards in there. Really pretty. So I decided to try to test my limits inside the Legion dungeon as well. I entered with my level 50 paladin. The mobs were actually green to me. Didn't really have to heal myself, as you could see with these packs of scorpids. And I'm purposely standing in the poison, and I'm not taking any damage. And a lot of that has to do with my my passive abilities, my shields, and self-healing and whatnot. I thought that was interesting to see, like pulling 45, 46 elite mobs. Didn't do any damage to me, really. Same thing with the first boss, too. I, was purposely not moving around or getting out of the way of his abilities and trying to see just how much damage I could take, and it took quite a little bit of time, but towards the very end, I think I got to like the 80 percentile before I killed the boss, but it did take me quite a few minutes to kill the first boss. By no means was a one-shot. It wasn't necessarily difficult, just because I wasn't taking a lot of damage. Granted, I am in a prot pally build here, with the appropriate gear, but still, my damage output just took me still a few minutes to kill the first boss. So skipping ahead, same thing with the rest of the trash within Nighthold. They're level 45, 46-ish, so these mobs were green to me, but I wasn't taking much damage, which I thought was very interesting. Some people were asking about experience. I wasn't getting any experience as I killed these mobs. Like I said, some of them were green to me, but XP is either turned off or probably not going to be a very efficient way to level in Shadowlands if you're to bring like a level. My guess is that maybe either XP is turned off, XP gains inside these raids, or it's probably going to be very minimal as it is in the the way things are currently set up in the game. So same thing with the chromatic anomaly. I tried to pull even like a few trash packs with it, and again, it didn't really pose much of a threat to my health. The only thing again was that just it took me a while to take the boss down, like a couple of minutes basically. So finally for Trilliax, which is the next boss, with a very iconic voice acting.
The master has returned. We must ensure the household is immaculate.
Love to hear his voice. Kind of reminds me of the XT robot inside Ulduar.
My old toys will fight my new toys!
On second thought, he kind of sounds more like Morose from Karazhan.
I'll have the cleaning crew take care of this mess.
With his fight, I purposely, again, ignored all of the mechanics and tried to see how much damage I could take, and sure enough, I did actually die during this fight, just because I wasn't moving and waiting to see what happened. So I got him to about half health before he killed me. It was nice to see that I could die on some of these boss fights, a little refreshing to see with Legion. And finally with BFA, not much to report on with BFA. I actually was unable to zone into any of the raids inside BFA. You could probably assume that the BFA raid levels will be level 50. I guess that makes the most sense considering your level 120s are technically converted to level 50. So it would make the most sense to me that the mobs and the bosses inside the BFA dungeons are tuned to level 50. That about wraps up my quick overview of the legacy raids that I checked out. Now again, I didn't go deep into these dungeons, I didn't kill the final bosses, and I didn't check out every single legacy raid that is available inside the game. This was more of like a quick run through just to get an idea of the levels and share that with you guys. Possible that there are some level discrepancies that I missed. I'm sure those will come out as time goes on and as we all continue to explore these legacy raids within the Shadowlands expansion. So I thank you for taking this quick little journey with me. I always like doing legacy content. It's a trip down memory lane, going through each expansion, and you kind of think about the fond memories that you have playing each expansion. Yes, even WOD, I had some good memories playing WOD. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this type of video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and of course, let me know what's going on in the comment section below. Also open to feedback on future videos that I could make similar to this, or anything that you guys have in mind, please let me know. And thank you so much for tuning in. Want to give a shout out to all of my Patreon sponsors. If you are interested in supporting the channel, supporting the content creation that I do, as well as my roommate, Pastaface, you could go to patreon.com/WARCRAFTBREW and help support the channel in that regard. Don't forget to follow me on all of my socials as well. We do almost daily live streams on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/QuissyTV. And don't forget to follow QuissyTV on Twitter as well. Thank you so much for watching again, and I hope you have a great day. Stay chill.